please don't ever forget, I have a whole website, davidpendergrass.com. It's full of other information. I have a Twitter account, Dr. D. Pendergrass. I can send you encouraging texts for free. I'll go to davidpendergrass.com and see all the information there. It can be difficult as a Christian to know what to do with our money. And there are all kinds of good books out there to read, but I encourage you, if you want something short and sweet and to the point, check out my book, Give It Away, on Amazon.com. It's very cheap. Go there today to get Give It Away, and it's a wonderful study to use in small groups. It has discussion questions and reflection questions ready to go. It's a 4-week study on how the earliest Christians used money and their possessions.
Have you read A Skeptic Challenges a Christian yet? This is Dr. David Pendergrass's amazing book. If you've not read it, you can get it on Amazon. And you could even buy one for a friend. Grab a copy and read it today.
It would help me a whole lot. If you like this podcast, let people know about it. Just share the link. Just share the link. What would Jesus do? He would share the link. That's what I think. I think he would do that. Let people know about A Glimpse of the Kingdom today. Hello, thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. I might sound kind of funny right now because my tongue is getting over having an ulcer on it. A couple weeks ago, I bit my tongue, which is weird. A weird thing to do. I don't know why I would bite my tongue, but I sure did. And literally, not metaphorically, in America, when we say bite our tongue, it means that we don't say something we mean to say or we want to say, but we don't say it. But literally, I bit it and it hurt. And a little tear trickled in my right eye. I think it's my right eye. And reminds me of Demi Moore. You know Demi Moore, the actress? This is very theological, people. So pay close attention. This is all about Jesus. She can cry where she wants to. She picks which eye the tear comes from. This is amazing. I heard that years ago. And I'm so glad that fun fact stayed in my mind because it has changed my life. Changed my life. Anyway, I bit my tongue. It gave me an ulcer and it hurt a whole lot. And I couldn't do podcasts for, I'm really about a couple weeks because I sound like just worse than I do now. Anyway, I'm so much better. I was going to do this podcast and then I said no. And then I said yes and no. The problem doing this podcast is I don't want the point at all to be taken away from it. David thinks he's the man. I don't think I'm the man. But I did think that perhaps it might be encouraging to people who hear it. And that is how to be Christian at work. Right now, at the time of the recording of this podcast, I'm in between my career jobs, you might say, where I work as executive leadership at churches. And so to help take care of my family, I got it's part-time. It's basically full-time, but it's not 40 hours a week, but almost is. I work as a waiter at OG, Olive Garden. And I've eaten at Olive Garden for many years, and I love it. But there's one near where we live right now, and I could just about ride a bicycle there if I wanted to, which is great. And I started there, I guess it's now about 6 weeks ago, and it's been exhausting. And I've learned even more about human behavior when people come to order food. I've learned a whole lot about what it means to be a server at a restaurant. Back when I was a kid, I worked at restaurants. I was a dish. I don't know what they call it. I cleaned dishes. I did the dishes at a fairly nice restaurant. That was hard work. I've done a lot of cooking at different restaurants. We might call short orders of fast food stuff and the stuff. I worked at a cafe. I've done all that kind of stuff, but it's a long time. What I never ever did was actually ever become a waiter. And recently, in this condition my family's in right now, I prayed for a while that God would, of course, give me some kind of extra income because it's been an extremely difficult time for my family for almost 3 years, but certainly the last year. And he gave me something, and that helps a little bit, and I'm praise God for that. I also prayed not just for income. I prayed for that God would give me a place where I could be a influence for Jesus. And again, I've already said I'm already there, and I told I don't want this podcast to be how awesome I am because I'm not awesome. But some people, if you're listening to this, you might find encouragement, maybe a little bit of challenge for yourself, because there's nothing I'm going to say in this podcast about what I've done, and I'm sure I could do even more, but what I've done isn't extra super special. It's just what I think disciples of Jesus do. And I think about that often when I think about people all through my life, but certainly even now, people who get up every single day and do the drill, do the routine. They go, plumbers and teachers and insurance adjusters and on it goes. Those of you who are listening who do not work around Christians all the time. Now, it's been a long time since I've not worked around Christians all the time, or so-called Christians, because when you work in churches, you're usually surrounded by them. And that doesn't mean at all that they all act like Jesus all the time. My goodness. But staff typically does. People in the church typically it's split, but at least they typically have a social expectation at a church, even if they're not a staff person, to be kinder and more, to use a secular term, more positive and so forth. They're not always as punkish and so forth. When you work in the secular world, of course, it is different. And I've worked many jobs in the secular world, and it's just been a long time since I've been in one. But I did for years and years. I started working when I was 14, 15 years old, all the way up until my first church job. And anyway, even then on and off. But with secular positions, of course, I understand very much you're not surrounded by people who have the same social expectations oftentimes. And my first encouragement to you is I really encourage you, if you haven't already, and maybe you have, and maybe you've kind of fallen away from this, but is try your best to see your job, I almost said church job, to see your job genuinely as an opportunity for ministry. That you do not see your position, no matter what it is, as irrelevant for the kingdom of God. That you do not squander the opportunity you have. That you actually do pray. You ask God for his wisdom every day, or as often as you think about it, for sure. God, please let me be your light, your salt. Help me make disciples here, wherever I might be. Because you being attuned to that will not only make you better mentally and emotionally and psychologically, spiritually prepared to say something, but I'm convinced the Spirit will actually use that. He will say, okay, if you want me to use you, I'll use you, which means you need to listen up carefully in conversations. So I do. I pray often. I thought, God, before I even got the job, and then I got a job, and now I pray specifically that I do that. Every time I go on shift. That's not true. Most of the times, I have not done it every time. Most of the times before I go on shift, I ask God, please help me when I'm having conversations with staff people. There are a lot of staff people. There are people who are customers. So both staff and customers, ask God, please help me just give me wisdom. Help me be a Christian, no matter what is said, no matter what is done. So my first encouragement is really, I really encourage you to take advantage of every single day, every single shift, every single opportunity to be ready to talk about Jesus, to be encouraging, and sometimes just being, you might say, positive is a good thing, in that kind of environment. That reminds me of where I work right now. When I first got there, leads me to my second point. When I first got there, it's a little different now, and I'll tell you why. But when I first got there, for a lot of staff are overwhelmingly negative. Overwhelmingly negative. Negative about customers, negative about work, negative about whatever, constant foul language. Constant. I mean, it's been a long time since I've been around that kind of bad language, except for my wife. My wife has a horrible I'm just kidding. She doesn't listen to my podcast anyway. She does. She doesn't support anything I do, so I'm just kidding. She doesn't cuss except for Christmas. Christmas Day, she just lets it fly. But I haven't been around that kind of language in a long time. And so that was a little bit of a shocker. And not that I've been around language. I've seen movies, but at least when I watch a movie, if it's too bad, I turn it off. And even if I hear it, I can turn it off. I don't go rewatch it over and over and over. But to be around people who speak that way, that's been a while. And I've been around people on staff in churches who cuss, which personally frustrates me. Not because just cussing alone sends you to hell or you can't be Christian. Of course not. Of course not. I mean people who are professional Christians who just made up their mind, I don't care, I'll talk whoever I want to talk. Well, that's not Christian. I mean, that violates exactly what Paul said in Ephesians. Anyway, but it's been a long time. So my second major point is I've noticed that there's an enormous negativity, enormous bad language, foul language, it feels icky. It feels dirty, it feels nasty, and it spreads. It becomes socially acceptable. So while in some environments it's socially acceptable to be happy, all right, yay, okay, like church life, how you doing, Bob? Okay, good, bless you, God bless you. But for it's socially acceptable in this work environment, for a lot of them, to be the exact opposite. It's cool to be negative. It's cool to make fun of people. It's cool to lose your stuff. And see how I said stuff there? That's cool. And I knew right away that I was going to have to outcuss them to fit in. And I'm just kidding. I knew right then that I knew immediately I'm going to be a weirdo. Not loner, not unique. There are other people who didn't talk that way, but I knew right away, and here's my second major point. I knew that as a Christian, I was going to stand out alone just because I did not act like that. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, if you listen to my podcast, hopefully you know this about me so far. It doesn't mean for a billionth of a second, I therefore think I'm superior to them. All I'm saying is, because I'm trying my best to act like Jesus, it means I will be different in this regard. That they will not, and they must not hear from me that kind of language, that kind of negativity. That's a simple little thing to stand out as different. And I do want to stand out to be different, as I'll say more in just a second. But to say a little bit right now, I do want to stand out and be different because I want to be able to talk about Jesus whenever I can. And I've got to be able to stand out on this simple little baby thing so those more serious things come about. It's just a whole lot easier for me to be taken seriously. But I knew that it was going to be a place to stand out. I knew I was going to stand my ground. And so simple things like smiling or saying, you got this. I remember one person, she was taking a cork out of a wine bottle, and the corks, when you take out of the wine bottle, if you don't know this, see, I don't drink alcohol, so I know nothing about alcohol besides what I see on movies and then, watching my wife get drunk. I don't know anything about it. And that's just a joke too. So anyway, when the corks can break, when that breaks, you've got one little more shot to get the cork out of the wine bottle. If not, it falls down inside the wine and it's over. The whole wine bottle is just worthless then. Well, anyway, this one young woman, I'm about as old as the management there at the restaurant. I am. I think there's a few waiters who were older, but I think I'm older than all the management. Anyway, this young woman, she's probably in her 30s. She was getting a broken cork out. And I said, what a pro. No, I'm bragging on her. I meant that seriously, of course. And what a pro. And she goes, I know you think I know better by now, or I do this, but I blah, blah. And I said, no. I wasn't being sarcastic. I really was saying I'm impressed. Way to go, because you're getting a broken corkscrew. And that happened many times, things like that, where people just assume whatever comes out of a person's mouth is making fun of them. And so I'd still have to do this a little bit. Say, no, I meant it. Or, so I have little quibs going around like, man, you're a pro, or you ought to see some of these, females, and I say that because it's true. The guys tend not to do it, besides the busters, people who clean the table. But the female waitresses, they can carry some heavy junk way above their head. This one young woman, she's younger than I am, probably about 10, 15 years. She carries 2 trays with a bunch of stuff on it, one in each hand. And so little things like that, of trying to be encouraging to everyone. That's impressive. Way to go. I'm telling you, nobody talks that way. Something as simple as encouraging of how many trays, no one talks that way around me. If they talk, it's either about gossip, about partying, or negative around me. Now, that's not everybody. I'm just saying that's the comment. And my only point is, these are some really simple, silly things just to demonstrate that it's not all about negative junk all the time. And it's okay to lift people up and mean it. And to say, wow, that's really cool. Or the bartenders. I mean, it seems to me like a trillion different ways to make alcohol. And so it's impressive. They have all this stuff memorized down to, it's just amazing. That's a lot of knowledge. And so anyway, little things like that I try to brag about. And I knew that's going to be a way to stand out, to be different. And I want to stand out different. The third thing is I encourage you. To be clear one more time, my second point is, at your work right now, there probably are ways you can stand up and be different. Maybe it is being quote unquote positive. Maybe it is being encouraging. Maybe it is you're not the person who steals supplies. Maybe you're the person who doesn't gossip. Now, it will feel lonely. At my job, I don't feel that lonely because I'm surrounded by people, customers, and I'm an extrovert. But as far as on staff, very few people chat with me. And I'm also newer, but most people walk around, they hang out, they go to clubs and bars and whatever afterward, or restaurants. And so there's a lot of inside jokes. Well, since I don't join in gossip, you can feel lonely fast if you it just can. And at your work's probably the same way. Well, okay. If the worst case scenario is you feel lonely for a little bit because you're not joining in some kind of evil pablum, well, so what? I mean, so what? So find those ways to be those little things, just to stand out, to be different in a good way, where you're not coming across as pompous, you're not condescending, you're not throwing your nose up at the person, that idiom, of course, looking down on them and how dare you speak that way. No, just be a normal, cool person, but find ways to be the kind of person they know they ought to be. The third thing is, at some point, try to, as best as you can, weave in your Christian faith. Try to weave it in. Now, I grant, I really do understand. It's easier for me because as soon as a person asks me, wow, what restaurant did you come from? And I go, I didn't come from a restaurant. I've never been a server in my life. Are you serious? Wow, and that they say some nice things. Where'd you come from? Well, at some point, I tell them, well, I've been 20 years of executive leadership in churches. Basically, I was a senior pastor. Well, then I know word's going to spread, and it does fairly quickly. Within a couple weeks, several people kept coming up. I heard you're a pastor. Well, this is where the rubber meets the road for sure. And I know this day's coming. I knew it was going to come, and it came. And here's the deal, and it's the same thing with you. So I grant that it's easier when they hear I am a pastor. It's a little different from saying, what's your job now? Because that's your career. Maybe you were at a different school before, a plumber before, whatever. But at some point when you say, yeah, I am a Christian, I encourage you whenever possible, at some time, those words ought to come out of your mouth. At some time. And so if you're praying, if someone's going through a really just horrible, crappy situation in their lives, and you're at work and you hear about cancer or whatever it is. I've got a guy at my work, right? He's been struggling with cancer on and off, and he just told me, and I told him, I want to pray for you. When that happens, it's okay to preface it with, well, I'm a Christian and I'm going to pray for you. Just those little things. And if that scares you to say the words, I'm a Christian, and I'm serious about this, I've said this on the podcast, practice it. I'm serious about this. Practice it. Say it in the mirror. Just, I'm a Christian. I am a Christian. Most people, in my experience, never say those words. They'll go their entire lives and not say it. People will say, I'll say more about that in just a second. I'll tell you what people say more and more. So anyway, at some point you're going to say those words, and hopefully you want that to spread. And then here's the thing. This is leading up from point number 2, which is being different. And I've said this in other podcasts too, but I'm going to repeat myself on purpose. When the news breaks that you're a Christian, the goal is the person who hears it is not surprised at all. That they don't make a face. They don't go, you? What? Because you know what's going to come. When news breaks and they find out, you want to break all of their stereotypes and judgments and judge, because most people are judgmental. If they're not religious, they're going to say, certainly not religious at all, and they think about, quote, religious people, they're going to have a perception. They're going to have an uncle who's devout, or mom and dad who are just nominal Catholics or something, or people, they hate them, or they were molested as a kid by Christian, so-called Christian or whatever. They're going to have their mind made up to some degree about what it means to be Christian. And if it is negative, it doesn't matter what it is, whatever their view is, you want, when the news to break to come, that in their mind, that they're not surprised at all that you are, when it's a good influence. Now, maybe their vision of a Christian is only negative, and then they're shocked you are, because you don't come across at all as a judgmental punk, and every Christian I've ever met is a judgmental punk. Okay, great. So shock them. That's good. That's a good surprise for them and for you. But you can understand my point, I'm sure, by now. If by now you've been dropping F-bombs, if you've been gossiping, if you've been negative, if you've been stealing work supplies, if you've been lazy on the job, if you're gossipy, if you look and act just like every pagan does at work, and then news breaks, is your witness blown forever? No. It does mean you got to apologize. It does. I mean, you got to say, yeah, I blew it, or at minimum. It also means, of course, at minimum, you've got to change your ways instantaneously. I mean, you've got to stop immediately. Stop all gossip, all negative, you just got to stop it. Because otherwise, no one's going to take you seriously. I mean, they're just not going to. So the third thing is you want to bring up, I am a Christian. How can I pray for you? Or I'm going to pray for you. And and that leads me to my fourth thing. When news breaks that, if they don't know this, and this is certainly true for being a pastor, and in my experience, it may be different for yours, in my experience, is a little different from people who are not pastors by trade or vocation. The responses are a little different. Because when someone says pastor, they're either going to have a mental image of a priest, if they grew up Roman Catholic, or a pastor if they went to other kind of Protestant church. And it's amazing the people's responses. And at Olive Garden, it's no different. Whether on staff or whether it's customers, either their jaw drops in shock, just shock of, oh my goodness. We get at this, where I live, there's a lot of retirees and a lot of people come down. They call them snowbirds. They come down for vacation. And they'll either vacation or they have a home here or a condo, whatever, for several months. And it'll flood during the fall, winter seasons. And we get a lot of older people in the restaurant. And about, 30-40% are just horrible, grumpy punks. Just terrible, grumpy people. And others are neutral to really cool. You just never, you don't really know. And that's just how it is. But you do have more preponderance of a lot more grumpy people, the senior citizens, at least here. And but when the fun ones tend to be, to me, kind of extra fun because it's a little extra surprising. And I had these three older women. They, probably in their 70s, 80s. There were 4 different families originally moved down from, I think it was New Jersey, and 3 of the 4 families of the couples they had lost their husbands. So the 3 widows of the 4 friends had gone to dinner. And we were laughing and cutting up a little bit. And one of the main women, who was a little edgy, a little sarcastic, and not just witty, but a little edgy, but she was nice, but she had a little edge to her humor. At one point, they started chatting with me, as they do. And as you might imagine, I'd like to chat with people some. And they finally asked me, what do I do? And if you're not doing this, where'd you come from? And I said, pastor. And their jaws dropped. And the one who was kind of edgy, who I don't even know, apparently she did cuss, she goes, oh, and she covered her, she goes, and I cussed earlier. I'm so going to hell. And and we all laughed. And I said, you are. Can I get you some more tea? No, I didn't say that. I so should have said that. That would have been, that's so funny. I got to remember that one. We laughed about it. But that is a pretty common response that people, oh my goodness. And one is, oh my goodness, just because they don't expect to meet people like that. But just the surprise of, wow, like a pastor here, or whatever, which is a bit odd to me. Being a pastor, that's kind of weird, just from my perspective. But typically the shock is because I'm telling you, they're thinking, what have I said or done in front of that person? And this leads to the point, this point here is, get ready for various responses to when news breaks that you're a Christian. I have found people who become immediately adversarial. Oh, and they'll make a face and, oh, so you believe in all that and you blah, blah. You'll have an immediate adversary. And it's not about you. It's because I guarantee you now they're bringing up some kind of past wound or anger or confusion or whatever it is from the past. And now you represent that unresolved grief or anger or whatever. And so just be prepared. Some people are going to want to just start arguing, or they're going to treat you differently. And okay, just get ready for it. And so what? You're not going to change who you are. You're going to be salt and light and loving no matter what. You're going to try your best no matter what, by God's strength, to be the best. Other people are going to see, this is where it's a little different, maybe because they think I am pastor now. But one of the most common responses I get is people treat me like a priest. And what I mean is they start confessing sins. I need to go back to church. I haven't been in church in so long. I need to do better. They immediately start telling me all their faults. Not all of them, but you know what I'm saying. Immediately they say, oh, I should do better. I laugh. Okay, all right. Or, or whatever. Another one is to tell me if people who kind of agree, and maybe they don't know how to say it, or maybe they're marginal believers, and what they're going to say, almost no one says, I'm a Christian too. What they're going to say is, I'm very religious. I'm very religious. I had a woman tell me that the other day. She said, I grew up in Catholic. I grew up in Catholic church. How did she say it? I grew up in Catholic church, but I didn't really learn anything at all, so I switched over. But I'm very, 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 very religious. I believe in God. Now, I wanted in the moment to go, I was thinking this. Well, first off, I'm so glad she's telling me, because now she's opening up to me. And I was just, and I want to come to this in just a second. I'll say more about that exact experience. But I do want people to say something in response, because that's a good sign for a conversation. That's good. But anyway, and I'll come back to that in a second. But that's an example of what's common. People, I'm religious, I believe in God, and those kind of things. Fine. That's cool. So just understand when they come back and respond, you just, in that moment, good. When news breaks, be prepared for various responses. And that's it. So what do you do when people then start responding, whether it's shock or horror or whatever it might be? This is where my encouragement to you, and maybe my last point, is this. When the news does break and they start talking about whether religious or not religious, if their jaw drops, they don't bring it up again, fine. Okay. But you still be you. But the ones that do, it is not the time ever, it seems to me, in my opinion, in those moments, to correct exactly how they say it. So, for example, the woman who said, I'm very, very, very religious, she said I'm very, very religious, and I grew up Catholic, I switched over. Now, I was thinking, I don't know what those things mean. I don't know what it means to be very religious. If I give her the benefit of the doubt, I'd probably say she means she believes, maybe she's a Christian. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but I'm not going to say, what does that mean? You switched over to what? To Buddhism? Does it mean she's a Protestant now? But the odds are very high based on my interaction with her, but also just with humans in general. Most people don't even know the difference between a Catholic and a Protestant Orthodox. If I ask the average Christian, what are the major branches of Christianity? In my experience, 9.5 out of 10 Christians could not even elucidate. They couldn't tell me the 3 major branches of Christianity. So since I assume most people are ignorant about how to articulate basic Christian things, and that's not superior, I'm just saying it's a fair assumption. Most people don't know much about it, which means my job there isn't to correct them. Any kind of correction I give whatsoever will only come across as condemnatory and judgmental and condescending. That is precisely what I'm not, and 2, I don't want to come across as. It'll blow your chances probably, at least for quite some time, before they open up to you again about it. So if your demeanor changes and you, whatever, you cross your arms or look away, when news breaks, if they ever start opening up about their faith, if you can, stop what you're doing, face your body toward them, look them in the eyes, and listen and smile. Demonstrate genuine warmth. What comes out of their mouth doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I'm an Arminian Calvinist, Presbyterian Catholic, and my mom is a Buddhist Universalist, and okay. Well, in other words, if none of that can fit together at all in any possible spectrum, okay. Let them talk and listen. Now, if there's time for it and they want to have a theological conversation, it's always good to ask okay, tell me more about that. What does that mean? But of course you're acting because you are genuinely interested. And that's it. That you listen. You demonstrate warmth. Well, David, can I never correct them? If you're chomping at the bit to correct someone, that might be you might need therapy. I do think, however, there are times when it is okay to do it. I don't know of a hard rule, and I'm not assuming my rule principle I'm about to give you is gospel truth or something. When I was training at the store, when they found out that I had a PhD, and because most people in my experience don't give a rip, they really don't care about you. They just don't care. What they care about is themselves. They care about themselves, their interests, their hobbies. They'll talk about themselves until their nose bleeds. Most people in my life don't give a rip about me. They don't ask about me. They talk about themselves. So I just let them do it. So I don't join the party and go, well, I'm married and I have kids and I went to school and here's my resume and I've done this and I ran a successful male quartet and we recorded albums and we were on the radio. Who cares? They don't care. They don't give a rip. If they gave a rip, they'd ask you about it. It's the only reason at all that a person gives their resume is because they want validation. They want you to care. Well, don't be that person. But really, develop some good self-esteem, realize that God loves you, and get that validation, that nutrient from people who love you, but not from strangers and coworkers. Come on. So, when I was going through training, and of course, no one ever asks about me, ever. And when it came apropos, the other trainee, she actually asked, of course, I'm always asking about people. Tell me about so-and-so. Where are you from? Wow, okay. Now, I'm doing that because I do care, and I know I'm thinking at some point in this conversation, I might be able to bring up Jesus. And I mean Jesus. I don't mean religion. I don't mean God. I mean Jesus. I would say things like, that reminds me of something Jesus taught. Those kind of things. So I'm looking for those opportunities. And at some point they brought up, and it, then all of a sudden, oh, wow, you did this and that. Wow, okay. Well, as soon as that happened, the trainer, a fairly knowledgeable guy, brought up things about religion and how I'm trying to say this kindly, how he grew up in a certain denomination he called It's Like a Cult. And I won't talk about his story, which is okay. But I knew right away what he was talking about. And frankly, I knew more about it than he did. I just did. Even though he grew up in it, because I could tell right away he didn't know where it fit into things. And that's okay. That's my point is, my job there was not to correct him on that. At least I didn't think, I'm not here to correct your knowledge on that. It doesn't really matter. But he said something. He said, later on in life, he started studying other religions, and he found out he was surprised to learn they all basically taught the same thing. And the trainee said, yeah. Now, she grew up, I think her parents were Roman Catholic, but she kind of was as a kid and stopped going. Because again, I'm their priest all of a sudden. I'm thinking, I need to get back or whatever it is. And she's real nice, and he's a pretty nice guy. Well then, so back to my issue of, is it ever good to correct a person? In that issue, there's one principle that I think it's okay. And that is, and I'm still working on this myself, and the principle is, does a person state a view about Christianity, particularly about salvation, an issue of salvation that is false? For me, that's the bare bone minimum. So if a person said to me, and I'll go back to my example. If a person said, for example, it's just surprising to me that in Christianity, Jesus is not the only way. I learned in all my studies, there's many ways to be a Christian, including being a Muslim Christian. Salvation issues, that's the one part I go, well, no. So in this particular issue, when he said, all religions say the same thing, to me, that fits in that same principle of, absolutely that's false. Anybody who's ever done even a cursory examination of what the major world religions say will tell you immediately they do not say the same thing at all. And if you think that, it means you think, to some degree, of pluralism. That is, all religions lead to where they're going, the road down the path, the destination they all want to go. Well, that means that Jesus is not the way, the truth, and the life, and so that's a salvation issue. Now, maybe I'm mistaken and you disagree with that. But in the moment, I thought, my heart started racing a little bit. It always does, because I like to talk about theology and and so forth. But in the moment when he said that, I thought, and this all happens real fast, which is why it's good to make up your mind a little bit ahead of time. But I'm praying, I'm thinking, all those things I'm saying, I'm looking at them, they're talking about this and that, and he's pontificating about religion and so forth. And she just opened, the other trainee talked about how she hasn't been in church in a long time, and she's still trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life and all this stuff. I'm trying to be open and warm and safe because news is broken. It's already broken. I've only been here a couple of days. This is, several weeks ago. It's already broken. And now is this moment right now is my response to their talking about their own religious views will help them decide very quickly whether David is someone I ever want to speak again on these issues. And so all in my mind and my heart's going on, God, please help me. What I need to say, what do I need to do? So I'm open and warm and kind, but true, but great, all those things. Well, when he mentions that, I thought, okay, well, I think I need to say something about that. One is just to demonstrate I'm listening, but also demonstrate that's false, because to me, it seems to me that's a biggie. So what I decided to do is, instead of saying, oh, you're wrong, dummy, because that would have just been mean, and I don't talk that way. But I don't turn into a hateful punk, and try my best not to be condescending. What I said was, that's interesting, and that's an interesting view. I used to teach at a college for a couple of years. I taught world religions, and so I studied them fairly in depth for a long time, also my PhD. And actually, your view is actually a very common view, but it's a common misconception about religions, and that is that religions do teach the same thing. When you look at them, at what they really do believe, it's actually it becomes clear that they actually don't. And they were silent just for a second, and I thought, I don't want to just say, I didn't want to just stop there and say, you're just wrong. I wanted to give a little evidence to demonstrate it wasn't me just trying to correct him. I want to demonstrate I'm being reasonable, and that matters to me. I want the Christians to come across as reasonable people, along with highly emotive, loving people, but I want to be reasonable too. And so I said, for example, right off the bat, I said, for example, all of the what we call Far Eastern religions, all of them, if you call even the ones that are more like philosophy, so Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, time is cyclical to various degrees, but certainly in Hinduism, Buddhism, time is cyclical. You're stuck in samsara, the birth, death, rebirth, reincarnation. But in the Middle East, the Near Eastern religions, so Islam and Christianity and Judaism, that's not true at all. Time is linear. It started and it will end. Well, these both cannot be true. So there are billions of people who are wrong. It's either time is linear or it's cyclical. That's it. And then they started staring at me, kind of nodding, like, huh. And I said, another example, Jews think Jesus was not the Messiah. Christians say he is. Well, one of us is wrong. So there's some fundamental differences of these religions. But anyway, having said that, I agree. I said, but then I paused there. So I did enough correcting, and it seemed to me, without being overwhelmingly negative, because I'm not wanting to be overwhelmingly negative, and I want to end on something positive. And so I said, perhaps you're thinking about the ethics, because it is true. Oftentimes, the ethics of the various religions can be similar. And before I could almost finish my sentence, he started nodding. Yeah. They went, yeah. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. I go, oh no, that's true. They certainly have some degree of commonality. I said, it's true. And then I said, well, I'll stop there, man. And I put it on me. I said, I'll stop there. I could talk about religion. I love talking about it. But anyway, we can go ahead. And then I stopped talking on one thing, and that was it. And later on, just a few minutes later on, the trainer guy brought up something. He thanked me for it, and he said, I just love the fact that you're not judgmental and closed-minded. I really love that fact. And she goes, yeah, me too. And they really smile. And I went, praise Jesus. That was a win for Jesus. That in that brief moment, they met a Christian, unless they're just lying or delusional. I don't think either one of those things are true. They met a Christian who was kind, warm, and had the chief virtue in their mind that you can have, which is what? Being open-minded, being non-judgmental. Because that's the number one sin in American culture. And I passed their test. Now, as a Christian, do I think the number one sin is being judgmental? No, I think that's nonsense. But from their perspective, it is. Probably so. And that's, anyway. So therefore, it's a huge win, because I know later on, if I ever get to talk about Jesus, they will already think, I can talk about it with David, and he's going to listen and not be condescending and not tell me I'm going to hell and act like his way is the right way all the time. And that's a good win. The other thing is, I know this is going to happen. They're going to gossip, or they're going to talk about me to someone else. And if ever the words come out, yeah, he's really cool. Or yeah, he's a pastor and he's really nice. Those little bit of adjectives after my role is. Same thing with you at work. Yeah, Jeff's a Christian. He's really cool. Yeah, Susan's a Christian. She's very sweet. You see that, yes, Ryan is a Christian and he's a very good listener. Yeah, he's really kind. He's always praying for me. That is amazing. So that's all I'm going to say about all that. I hope this encourages you to keep seeing your workplace as a place for ministry. Break up the monotony. Get out of the mindset that I got to go to work and it's just the same old junk all the time. It's not the same old junk all the time. You're dealing with other human beings. And it's okay for you to care about them, be personal without prying, but see those opportunities to pray for yourself, pray for them, talk about being a Christian. When news breaks, get ready for their responses. If you've blown it, then stop blowing it. Really, that's it. Just own it and stop doing it. Stop joining in all the secular nonsense. get back to work of being a Christian. If you need further encouragement while you're at work, put scripture verses on your home screen, scripture verses on your desk, scripture verses on your phone. Put your Bible out if you can. Put a Bible out on your desk if you can do it. I'm like, if you don't get fired or something, but what's that all about? Even just sitting there, the conversations you would have just if it sat there on your desk. A prayer book on your desk, anything at all that might give you a chance to talk about that is outstanding. And then when the moment does come, be the good listener, be the person who's sweet, be the person who cares and loves on people. And when you can, you talk about Jesus and talk about salvation as best you can. And then it's, man, you're golden. God can use those moments all the time. And, well, David, I don't know what difference it's going to make at all. Well, in the world to come, we will. We will. In the age to come, I think we will. I'm convinced we're going to look back and God will, and you'll see every single proverbial seed that you planted and all the growth that God gave because of it, all because you took the time. Now, this is a minimalist approach. What I get today is a minimalist approach. You can go all in like my brother-in-law, and this is amazing. He stops almost everybody anywhere, restaurants or whatever, and looks them in the eyeball like a foot from their face and says, I want you to know God loves you. He loves you. He's got a plan for your life. I mean, you can go farther. You can just share that. I know people who give a tract right then into the person who's at the checkout counter and said, do you know Jesus? I mean, all kinds. So I'm not here to tell you you've got to do the minimalist approach. My encouragement is the minimalist approach is at minimum, I think, what Christians ought to be doing at minimum. But go all, if you want to go more hard, do it. I mean, my goodness, you can really do some good, depending on your level of courage and wherewithal and opportunity. God bless you. Well, the conversation isn't finished. You can always reach out to me on social media. Are you on Facebook? I am too. At Glimpse of the Kingdom. Glimpse of the Kingdom on Facebook. Be sure to like it and you can see updates there. Also, if you're on Twitter, check me out at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass, or at Glimpse the King, at Glimpse the King. And I try my best to respond to comments and questions on there as quickly as I can. If you want more, there are many more resources on the podcast and my blog. Go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, and you can see a full list of the podcast, and my blog is available for free. Are you active in a church right now? I'd be happy to come out to your church and do all kinds of classes and workshops there. Check out davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com for more information. And may God in His great grace give you even just a glimpse of His kingdom this week. See you next time.